guys, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to be giving you 3 ways to make a scrunchie. One with a glue gun, one with just a sewing machine, and one that has a bow on it. And yeah, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to my channel, and let's get going. Okay, so for the first scrunchie, it's going to turn out something like this. This scrunchie is going to be made with hot glue, and it's a no-sew scrunchie, so yeah. And I actually got the inspiration for this one because I got really bored one time and I really wanted to make something, so I was just like wandering through the internet and I saw the scrunchie DIY video thing, so I was like, why not make one? And this is the final result. It may not look so bad at first glance, but if you take a closer look, it's disgusting. Like, there's so many hot glue clumps and it's like really hard. I can't move it around in the scrunchie so the hot glue isn't showing because it just like stays like that. But yeah, so anyway, let's get going with this first scrunchie. Okay, so for the first scrunchie, the materials you're going to need are some fabric, which I'm using this blue one with this fun pattern on it, a hot glue gun, and hot glue sticks, some scissors to cut out your fabric. You don't exactly need a ruler, but I would recommend one just to be sure. You're going to need some hair ties, well, one hair tie. You're going to need something like a cylinder to put your scrunchie around so you can make it better. Yeah, and then this is optional, but you might also want to use some pins to keep the fabric in place so it's not sliding all over the place. Yeah, and to start off, you're going to be measuring your fabric, which would be around 19 inches by 3.5 inches or 48 centimeters by 9 centimeters. But also, if you wanted your scrunchie to be a different length or a different width, you could also adjust the measurements if you wanted to. Oh yeah, you might also want a pencil to kind of like draw the lines so you can have better cuts. Yeah. And then once you're done measuring out your fabric, you're gonna cut it into a rectangle. And once you're done with your cutting out your fabric should look a little bit like this. And then what we're going to do is just like fold in a little piece of fabric and then hot glue it to the other side of the fabric. This will help make it easier when we're actually like gluing the scrunchie together, and it'll also make it like not as stiff. You actually don't have to hem the smaller ends. You just have to do the longer edges because we're going to like fold them together at some point, and you'll find out in a second. Also, you want to try to put as little of hot glue onto the fabric, because if you put too much on there, it's going to become hard, then it's not going to be the best. Once you're done hot gluing your fabric, it should look a little bit like this on the wrong side and this on the actual side. Moving on, the next thing you're going to do is you're going to put the right sides of the fabric together, and then you're going to make a small hot glue line on one of the small edges. Once you're done with that part, it should look like this. Make sure it's dry before you actually start to do the next step. For the next step, you're going to need a cylinder object. So I'm going to use my hydro flask. So what you're going to do is you're going to have the wrong sides facing out and just put it over your cylinder object. And then you're going to grab a hair tie and you're going to adjust the scrunchie and start moving the hair tie over the scrunchie. Once you're done with that, it should look a little like this. And then what you're going to do is you're going to go around the scrunchie and put hot glue on the little pieces you hemmed. Okay, now that we're done gluing all the way around the edges, you're going to carefully take it off of the cylinder object And there you go. It's a scrunchie, a perfect scrunchie. And let's move on to the next scrunchies. Okay guys, so for the next one, it's gonna look like just like a normal scrunchie. Here's what it'll look like at the end. And instead of using hot glue for this one, which I don't like using hot glue, for this one we're actually gonna use a sewing machine, which I prefer because it's better. Okay, so for the materials, you're gonna need a hair tie, some fabric, scissors for cutting your fabric, a ruler for measuring, basically just everything you used last time except for the hot glue and the hot glue gun. Also, I recommend using an iron because it kind of makes it 10 times easier, and yeah, and then you're also going to need a sewing machine, which is, mine's right here, but you can't really see that. Yeah, let's get going. The first things we're going to do is measure and cut our fabric, which is going to be the same measurements as last time, 48 centimeters by 9 centimeters, and however many inches by however many inches, and yeah. Then I'm just gonna cut the fabric. Okay, now that my fabric is cut, it's like really wrinkly, so I'm gonna iron it out. This is very optional, I'm just doing it, so I'm not gonna film it. Now that my fabric is ironed out, I'm gonna fold it in half. You're going to make sure it's the right sides together, which on this fabric there isn't any right side, so I just picked a side. And then what you're gonna do is, I recommend using a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. I'm going to just sew it down just on the thing. And if you don't have a sewing machine, you could hand stitch this, but you're just gonna use a running stitch and just, yeah. So I forgot to mention this, but if you did want to use pins and just pin along the sides, you could. This is kind of where it gets a little confusing. You're gonna take this, you're gonna need an iron for this. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna fold in all of the edges. You're gonna fold them in a 1/4 of an inch. And what you're gonna do is you're gonna just do that around all the edges, and you're going to hold your fingers there. Then you're gonna take your iron and just iron it so it makes like a crease in the fabric. Okay, it should look a little bit like this. And then you're just going to do the other side, and then you'll be done with this part. Once you're done with the ironing, it should look a little bit like this. And then what you're going to do is you're going to take your hair tie and put it in between the little parts you just ironed toward the center. You're going to line up both of the edges up, and then you're going to take a pin and then pin them together. And then you're just going to continue doing that all the way around the scrunchie. Once you're done pinning your scrunchie together, it's gonna look a little something like this. It's starting to look more like a scrunchie now. And then here, it's, I wouldn't say hard, just not easy. What you're gonna do is just sew around the outside, but you're gonna make sure, you have to make sure that it's like straight. And it's not like bunching up the fabric, so you're not sewing over multiple bunches of fabric at a time. And the seam allowance I'm using for this is an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance, but if you don't want to use a sewing machine, you could use the running stitch, or you could use something called the invisible stitch or a ladder stitch, or there's a lot of names for it. I just think it takes forever and it's difficult. And yeah, and also while sewing, I recommend starting the stitch at the seam because I think it just makes it easier so it doesn't go crooked and stuff. Yeah. And then you're just gonna trim up the threads on the end. There you go. There's your scrunchie. Here's what it looks like. I think it's really fun, and just a piece of advice, if you wanted so there's not like this outline thread that's white, I recommend getting a thread that's the same color as the fabric you're gonna use, because then you won't see the thread as well, and I just like the white. Well, there you go. There's your finished scrunchie. Let's move on to the next one. Okay, so for the next scrunchie, it's gonna look a little something like this at the end. It's just one of those normal scrunchies that you sew on the sewing machine. I guess you could make it with hot glue. It's just gonna be a lot harder. And there's just like these little two fabrics at the end that's like a bow. For the scrunchie, you're gonna need everything you used last time, because what you're gonna do is you're gonna start off with a scrunchie. It could be the one with hot glue. It could be the one with the sewing machine. It could be hand sewn if you want it to, which I don't do because it takes forever. So for this scrunchie, it's gonna be just the exact same scrunchie as the last one, just with those little bows at the end. Here's a picture. And yeah, you're also going to need just some extra spare fabric, scissors, a ruler. Yeah, that's about all you'll need. And let's get going. For the first steps, you're just gonna make a scrunchie. Go back to this time if you don't remember how to make it. And then you're going to take some scrap fabric and cut out a rectangle that's 4 inches by 9 inches. Now my rectangle looks like this. And from here, what you're gonna do is you're gonna fold it long sides to long sides, right sides together. And what I'm gonna do is I'm going to sew along the edges and with a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. And at the small edges, you're going to go in a diagonal way and just kind of like round off the corner, so it creates the effect of like a triangle at the edge of the bow instead of a square, which we don't really want a square. And yeah, and also what you're gonna do when you get toward the middle of the long edge, you're going to stop and not sew for like 1 to 2 inches, and this will help you flip it inside out so it's with the right sides facing out. So once you're done with sewing the outside, it should look a little bit like this. And what you're going to do is you're just going to trim along the edges, making sure not to cut over the thread so it stays an actual start of a bow. Yeah. And once you're done with that, it should look like this. And then what you're gonna do is, with the hole that you made, you're going to take it and just flip it inside out so the right sides are facing out. And then what you're gonna do is, with the hole, you're going to fold in the edges, put a pin in it just so it stays together so it's easier to sew, and just sew it with the sewing machine. If you wanted to, you could use the invisible stitch for this, but I just find it easier to use the sewing machine because it's gonna be hidden anyway with the scrunchie. Once you're done, it should look a little bit like this. And then you're just going to take it and take the scrunchie. And I like to hide up the seam on the scrunchie. So what you're going to do is you're going to find the seam and then just take the bow and just stick it through the hole of the scrunchie and tie a knot. And then you're done. Well, anyway, I hope you enjoyed that video. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you all next week. Bye!